So the topic of this workshop is translating your work. And here's kind of what we'll spend our next 2 hours doing together. We're going to start off with some introductions, and then move on to the different parts, kind of step 1, 2, and 3 to translating your work and getting it out into the world and to readers in other languages. Starting with translators, both finding a translator and working with a translator. Then we'll move on to the next step, publishers. Um, finding a publisher, whether that's journals and magazines or presses, like presses, publishing houses that publish books, and then what it's like working with an editor. And Rania knows already that we'll be calling on some of her experiences working with translators and working with editors. So you'll get to hear from my point of view as translator and also her point of view as author. And then at the end, we'll talk about a couple other parts of the literary ecosystem, agents, and the all-important question about funding, how you can get your work funded to appear in translation. And then at the very end, we'll have a chance to kind of all come back together and do some wrap up and talk about any pictures, any big picture questions that we haven't yet gotten to. And I'll also say that after each of these sections, we're going to stop and pause and have some time for questions. So yeah, I'm hoping that this can be more interactive, and that I'll get to hear and learn a lot from you. Okay, first off, introductions. As Rania introduced, my name is Elisabeth Jaquette. I am a translator from Arabic. Here's a number of the titles that I've translated over the years, including Rania's translation right here, front and center. The beautiful yellow with the blue river. I am American. I was born and grew up here in the United States. And after I finished college, I moved to Egypt and lived in Cairo and worked and taught
فعلا
and studied there for 5 years.
فعلا
So that's where I learned Arabic. And it's also where I started reading widely, first books translated
Samsung.
to English. And then, as I continued my studies in Arabic, learned started reading books in Arabic as well, and started to read really widely and really appreciate all the literature being written in Arabic that I wished my friends and colleagues and family in the US who read only in English could experience and read, but didn't have access to because it wasn't yet translated. And so for me as a translator, that desire to share a really good book or a really good poem or story or some work of art that impacted me, and just the desire to share it with other people was why I started work as a translator. So, I've at this point translated 6 books. I'm working on book number 7 with Rania right now, her second book to come out in English, inshallah, next year, with the new press. And I've also translated about 50 different writers for different magazines and journals and things like that. That is one part of my work in the world. And the other part is my work as in arts administration, similar to the roles that Catherine and Rania have at City of Asylum. For 7 years, I was the director of the American Literary Translators Association, and that's a membership organization. It's about 40 years old, for membership organization for literary translators, people who translate from all different languages into English, whether that's prose or novels or short stories or poetry or plays or songs or opera or graphic novels or hybrid works that combine multiple art forms together. And my work at ALTA, which is the American Literary Translators Association, was really based on supporting translators as they work with writers like you and get those pieces of writing into English. So helping them find funding, helping them with professional development, helping connect them to publishers, and talking about best practices for working with authors and for getting work out into the world. So I spent 7 years working closely to support translators like that. And then I moved in September to my new role, which is Director of Words Without Borders, which you see here is the home for international literature. And we'll talk a bit about how both of these organizations are great resources for you and can help support you and your work. Words Without Borders was founded in 2003. It's the premier destination for a global literary conversation. So that means that we have had a free online digital magazine of literature in translation. At this point, we've published over, let me see if I get the numbers right. 3,400 writers and translators from 147 countries and 141 languages. So it's a really diverse and varied array of literature that you can find on the site. We publish new works of literature Monday through Thursday every week. And we often have kind of themed issues. Rania's work has been published there. And we are always looking for new writers and writers who are publishing their work in English for the first time. And so at the end of this, I'll leave in the chat how you can get in touch with us to submit your writing. And we'd love to consider it to share with the world on Words Without Borders. Okay, great. So here's our digital magazine, Words Without Borders. Every day you'll see a new piece of literature published here. And then more as you scroll down. You can look at it by topic. And one thing I love is being able to travel the world through its literature and search for, different countries where you want to read work from, and being able to browse through this. You can also search for a country or a language or a writer and find the work that they have published. As you can see, some of Rania's great writing here. And it's a great resource. I guess one other thing that we love to do here is there are certain pieces where you can read both the original language and the translation. So here's a piece of Rania's. Rania, you're going to be my example for much of the day. And you can both listen to the author read their work or the translator read the work, see what the English translation is like, and then take a look at the the original language as well. And as you're looking to expand your reading, it can be a really great tool to be able to read things side by side in those languages. So coming back to presentation here, that has been a little bit about me. And yeah, I would love to do some introductions and learn more about you. So maybe we could start with you, Rania, and then you could, I don't know how people like to share, if people want to raise their hand and unmute and introduce themselves, or people want to introduce themselves in the chat. But I'm going to put up a couple of prompts here, actually a couple of prompts in the chat and on the screen. And look forward to learning more all about you so that I can make sure that our time today is spent on things that are useful to you.
Okay, thank you, Lily. And thank you for making me example for the thing. Words Without Borders, one of my favorite websites that I visit frequently. I read and enjoy whatever is there. I will talk a little bit about my experience with Lizzie. And for everyone, just please, if you have anything to share or a question or something, just drop it in the chat. Or if you're comfortable, you can just raise your hand and ask the question. Lizzie, I know her through Comma Press. Actually, one of my short story, she translated it into English, and it came out in I believe in 2016 or something, or 17. I'm not sure exactly. And then she translated my first collection, short story collection, 13 Months of Sunrise, which was a great translation. And this translation won a PEN English prize for funding. And also it was shortlisted in Warwick Prize for translation, for women in translation in Great Britain in 2020. Which for me was a great joy and of course a surprise as well. And I always saying that this collection is lucky because for me also just to translate it, it won المورد الثقافي funding, and also yeah, a prize during the Umar al-Thaqafi when we were under 30 at that time. And Mawlid al-Thaqafi, if anyone who in the Arabic region, I recommend to look them up. They have very good opportunities for everyone to support their work. And now Lizzie, generously, she's working on my second collection, A Woman Alone Under Neem Tree, and it will be come out next year, inshallah, as she said, and through New Press in New York. And Lizzie, she's not just a translator, actually. She also pitched the work. For example, she pitched the book for many publishers, and we had few offers, and then we just like made our mind into one. So she has worked actually because she's like so generous and very welcoming and loving what she does. She just don't end up with just translation and let the author find their own publisher. She works also as an agent and someone who could open the doors for the newcomers like us to be in the United States literary scene. So I'm so honored and so grateful that our path has crossed, Lizzie, maybe 10 years ago or so. I don't remember exactly, but I'm so honored for that. And yeah, I hope everyone can just take as much as they can from what Lizzie is eager to share. And if you have any question, just drop them in the chat or raise your hand and ask. Thank you.
Yes, can I ask a question? Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hi, Leslie. Hi, everyone. And thank you for organizing this wonderful workshop. It's an honor to be here. And my primary language is so rare in this world. And even in the Worlds Without Border, I couldn't find like any Kyrgyz author. It's like a Russian or Uzbek authors over there, but not anyone. And I'm writing in Kyrgyz, in Turkish, in English, in Russian too, like in 4 or 5 languages, I think. And I was thinking about like right now I have a project as it's like a fictionalized memoir project about my childhood, how in 1990 Soviet Union fall and what kind of sufferings and what kind of funny stuffs we had through. So I was just writing all of these things. It's kind of my project right now. And today I'm hoping to find someone who would be interested with this project because right now I'm trying to write it in English because I'm writing to English-speaking audience. And that's why I was just thinking about like how I suppose translator if I write in Kyrgyz because it's so hard to find someone who can translate from this rare language. So what kind of advice you can give me? And in terms of like finding an agent, I don't know anything in this country how to find agent. It's like Kyrgyzstan is a very small country and also very isolated country. And I don't think that in American or in the English-speaking countries, they would be interested in Kyrgyz culture or literature. So it's so interesting for me how to find agents for rare countries like mine, like for writers from rare countries like mine. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing all of that. It sounds like a beautiful project that you're writing, and I hope that I get to read whether it's you writing in English or whether it's you writing in another language, and I get to read a
Yeah,
translation.
right now I'm writing in English, and I can share with you if you share with me your email. I can share some
Yeah,
some pieces. So yeah.
perfect. I'll put it in the chat here. Um, Yeah, I will say, great. And I see some other, other people sharing their projects and their languages in the chat. So thanks for doing that. And Mukhtar will get to you after this. So thank you for raising your hand. Yeah, I will say that, in terms of who is, okay, a couple of different questions in there. How to find a translator, we're going to, I'll talk about that in a little bit. But you're right that it can definitely be more challenging when the language that you're writing in is one that isn't as commonly spoken or less commonly translated. I think that a great way is to use your network and use the network of the people in this room and maybe Catherine, and I'm happy to share, places that we can extend your networks by reaching out to other translators. So I think that that's a place to start. I know that also sometimes some authors work through bridge translations, and so maybe you choose to write your work in a language that isn't Kyrgyz, but is one that you do feel comfortable writing in. I think you said Turkish and Russian. Did I get that correctly? And then it might be easier to find a translator from those languages. Or, for example, at Words Without Borders, and sometimes we've translated, and at Alta also, we've translated from indigenous languages in South America for whom there aren't, or for which there aren't translators from that language into English, but there are translators from that language into Spanish, and then there are lots of translators from Spanish into English. So I don't know in your case if it's more common, or if you know translators from Kyrgyz into Russian, and then maybe Russian into English, or Kyrgyz into another language that you might be able to find translators for. But that we call that bridge translation, where it goes from one language to the next, and then that one onwards. We'll talk a little bit about agents as well. I will say that it's most common in the translation world, like Rania said, for a translator like me to both be working closely with an author and translating the work, and then also be pitching it or sharing it with publishers to say, hey, this is Rania's work. Here's a sample of it. Let me describe it for you. And I'm going to tell you why I think that you should publish it. And so often it's translators who are doing that work as opposed to an agent. But there are some agents who work with authors in translation as well. And just to address what you said, that you don't know if English readers would be interested in hearing your stories. I really firmly believe that they will be, and they are. And even if they don't know it yet, by making your work available is giving people an opportunity to experience something and learn something and have an artistic literary experience that they didn't know they wanted. But when you make it available, it's something that resonates with people. Words Without Borders has over 700,000 readers every year who come to the site from all over the world. A majority are in the US, or I think maybe 40% are in the US, but also those readers are all around the world. And so it's really, we're speaking English now. We all know the kind of power and position of English as a global language. And so translating your work into English isn't only about getting it to audiences in the US or the US and England, but also elsewhere around the world. Mukhtar, let me go to you. Yes.
Yes, hello everyone. I am Mukhtar Saad Shahata. I'm a writer with City of Asylum. And let me first to answer the three question. I'm writing in my mother language, Arabic, and a lot of my books published with Arabic, and already I have other book in English and Portuguese, because Portuguese is my second language. And I want to ask about two things. Now already I have a project. I'm working to make something for children, some novels, and from many countries that I live there, I make a collection from their traditional, their habitus, and something like that. And I already finished the first part of this project, but in Arabic. And training myself to make a translation by myself because I have a problem sometimes with translation. Once we sent our text to translator, sometime the translator lost the harmony or the music of the text that was in the original language. And because of that, sometimes I use AI to edit my text, but I don't know if it's that correct way or no. And until now, I haven't any agent to publish this book because I'm interested to write for children as a first time for me to write to them. And I hope after this workshop, I can find some way to make a connect with editor or an agent to publish it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I think I'm gonna not respond one by one to questions, but just let more people share about what languages they are working with and what projects they might have. And then we'll many of the questions that you raised we'll answer throughout our conversation today. Is there anybody else who'd like to share what language they're working with or what project? It doesn't have to be a full-length book, but maybe you're writing for you. Yeah, Arthur.
Hello, thank you for this wonderful opportunity to participate and share things about literature. I'm originally from Russia, and I came here thanks to the United States, thanks to Efficacy of Asylum and Artist Protection Fund after the beginning of the war with Ukraine. It was a very sudden move for me. I didn't expect it, so like I never planned to write anything in other languages than Russian and share it with other than Russian-speaking audiences. But I have, and I'm author of several books, primarily for children and teenagers. And I think, like having found myself here, I realized that probably one of the books can be translated into English and could be appreciated by the audiences here. And this book is already in the middle of translation, and I can see among the visitors of the Zoom is my translator. And we're working on this book, but now we found ways to do it kind of pro bono, or I'm funded by my fund, and this translator is a university student who is doing it for her like an academic project. So we are fine now with translation and translating it. But my question is, what do we do next? Where can we find an agent, speaking straightforwardly, and like is it worth doing? Is this piece of work good for? Is it good enough for American audiences? Because it is culturally bound, maybe not in terms of language, but in terms of environment, realia. And so we wanted to check, maybe through a professional agent, if it's worth trying finding a publisher or to think about something completely different. So this is my probably immediate question right now.
Great.
Thank you.
Those are great questions. And hello to your translator in the room, wherever they are. That's great that you've found a collaboration and you're working together. Later on, I'll look forward to hearing more about what that process has been like for the two of you, if you both want to share. I think your question about a work that is culturally bound, maybe not by language, but in the environment or the subject matter, or maybe the characters or, the topics. I think that that's something that that most literature in translation incorporates and I think that that's something that readers seek out and want from literature elsewhere in the world. I will say that here in the United States and in the United Kingdom, so really in the English speaking and reading world, there's been increased interest in literature in translation over the past 10 years. And so I think there are many readers who go to works in translation precisely for that, to encounter things that are new to them culturally or that they don't know about before, or to encounter something that they haven't before in their lives. And so, there's definitely something that translators amongst ourselves talk about a lot. How much work should the translator do to explain something in the text? Or, should the translator explain everything when there's something new that an English reader might not know? Or should they simply allow the writer to say the same things in the original language as in English, and a reader can look it up or can simply sit with learning something new. So, I think there's not a right answer to that, but I think it's certainly an asset and something that is important, and that your work contributes to work that's available in literature as opposed to a hurdle to get over. And then we'll talk about agents later. Anybody else who wants to share their work, whether it's a book or a smaller project? Anybody else who wants to share in the chat?
Yeah, I would.
Great, Hadaya.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to raise my hand, but it's not work, I think. Anyway, my name is Hidayah Shimon. I am from Palestine, from Gaza, and especially from Rafah. I'm here in US just for 5 months, and I'm a writer, and I have 2 novels in Arabic and 3 books, short stories in Arabic. I have many short stories translated in English and publishing in magazine, but I haven't until now book. So yeah, I would like to answer your question. I would like, and I'm working now for a special project about the genocide in Gaza. I write until now 10 short stories, and I decided to complete it maybe around 15 or 16. It's independent about the title of the short stories, because I focused on the girls and the women's suffering in this genocide, and it's really different between the short stories I write it before, because it's sometimes the imagine it's the reality, it's more than imagine. So I'm trying to tell the story in our way, and I write it in Arabic, and I think I'm very strong in Arabic, but in English, no. Sure, this is the first question I ask myself. I need someone that can feel the text, and I know there is many challenge when there's someone to translate it. But sure, we trust of the translator, because this is the message that we can tell the world about it. Sometimes I feel very disappointed what to tell. There is many thousand of stories, and terrible things happen in Gaza, but I'm trying just to say about that details. It's you can't see it in the media, or any newspaper, or even talking. Sometimes my family is still there, and they tell me that things. Even I am part of Gaza, and the people of Gaza I can't imagine this is happened. This is the topic and the main idea of the short stories. Try to return to the humanity and the feelings that they try to kill it inside us. Even you can imagine all the time the genocide. It's blood and killing. Yeah, it is, but they have many hopes and there's many great things to tell the story, and their voice all the time said we are not a number. And so I try to achieve this idea. When I came here, I trying to, maybe this is the first opportunity to me about this course or Zoom. I need to know more because I didn't know how it's going here in US. Actually, I just see advertising and all of it. It's you need to cost this, but it's not just the project and cost. I'm thinking more than this is what can I do to didn't feel this up or we can't giving up. So my strong is my word. Thank you. That's what I want to say.
Thank you, Hidea. That's you put that all so well. I really appreciate you sharing that. I think that yeah, writing is such a one thing that really stood out to me is just talking about how writing is so linked to our humanity, and sometimes we write just for ourselves and sometimes we write to share with others, whether it's personal things or whether it's terrible, horrific experiences we've been through. And that human act of writing and sharing is so important. Each of you, your work is so important, and I'm hoping that through this we can help share that with others, to build those connections and empathy and interconnectedness throughout the world. You also brought up something about like how do you translate something and you keep the musicality or the rhythm or the voice, and that's something that again translators work hard for, and uh, can certainly be a challenge with, I imagine that all of you have had an encounter with translation, whether it's translating documents or medical records or ID documents or things like that. And when there's industry translations, obviously just the importance is getting across the content and the information and having it be accurate, whether that's legal or other kinds of documents. And literary translation, you want to get across what somebody, the content of what they're saying, and also the literary value of the work and their particular voice and the rhythm or the tone, or if there's humor, if there's a reference, all those parts of literature that make it impactful and make it personal and make it human. That's part of the translator's job, is to bring those across in a new language. And I think that, especially later on, maybe we'll talk, and Rania, we can share about if there's times when we've worked on that together. But, I think that in moments when that is challenging, I think that that's a case where a good conversation and good collaboration between an author and a translator can really help a work succeed.
Nazi, we have
Yes. Go ahead, Rania.
the chat
Mhm.
from Yayong Tang. They say, I work with a lot of immigrant artists from all disciplines. For artists who are not working in the literary art, oftentimes they might need to find someone who can translate their artist statements. They go on, and the question is, they asking if there is a network or database of translator that people can reach or search and look for opportunities to cooperate. Yeah. If you can respond to this question.
Sorry, that's a great question. And I'm going to pull up an answer. So my next part of our conversation, actually, let me share here. Yeah, that's a great way to lead us to the next part here. Which is translating your work and how to find a translator. So let's see. So let's talk a little bit about how you might find a translator. One great way to do it, I think it can be, challenging, but also effective, is to use your networks and use your connections. So maybe there's somebody who has translated something of yours that wasn't literary, or maybe you are in an institution that has worked with a translator. And so using the networks, the people who you already know, maybe it's the institution where you're at and asking them if they know any translators who work from certain languages, or if you have a translator who's worked to translate documents or a grant application or medical documents or things like that, asking them if they might know somebody who translates literature from the languages that that person is working from. Another way is to start with a book, to say, maybe there's books in your language that have been translated into English. And so going to that book, or maybe it's a journal article or a magazine piece or a newspaper article, but to go to another work that you've seen be translated from your language into English and look up who that translator is. Most translators are freelancers, and so many of them have websites where you can contact them. It's very often the case that I'll get not often, but sometimes I will get a message from somebody saying, hello, I'm an author from this country, from, writing in Arabic. I saw that you translated this book and here's my project. Are you interested in translating it? Sometimes that person is someone who I'll work with. And sometimes I'll say, I'm sorry, I'm busy right now, but let me connect you to another Arabic to English translator I know. So I think, starting off with your network or with maybe a translator you've heard of and kind of working outwards can be a great way to get connected. Great. I'm trying to keep my eye on the chat as well. Another great resource that doesn't rely on networks that you have is the translators database from Alta. So I'm going to stop sharing this and instead share the translators database. Great. So this here is the website for the American Literary Translators Association. And if you go over here to the menu and then go down under resources, the first item here is the translators database. And I will say that we just launched this at Alta in January. So right now, we have a lot of translators here. And it's still being added to. There's still translators who are adding their information. And so if you don't see your language now, you can, please check back. But you can take a look here at different translators. You can search by language here. You see here's my name, but you can, search by Arabic and then see, translators here who translate from Arabic, and you can take a look at the genres or the kinds of books that they've done before. So Arthur, you said that you had a kid's book, children's book is one of the categories here. So you could look for people who have translated children's books. Here's somebody who, a couple people who translate from Russian and do children's books, but you already have a translator, so this would be for somebody else. But once you look through, then, if you want to learn more about somebody, we have pictures here, and you can click on this Learn More button, and you can, learn a bit about them, see what languages they work from, what kinds of books that they've done before. Here's links to other, to books that they have published. And then for most translators here, we have listed their website where you can see work and an email to contact them. So let me put this link in the chat.
Thank you, Lizzie. This is so useful. I love it.
Sorry, I'm having trouble getting to the chat here. There we go. There we go. So if you want to click on that link right there, that's a great question, Jonathan. You don't have to be a member of Alta to use the database. This is all for free for anybody. You do have to be a member to be listed. So like I'm a member of Alta, so I was able to get my profile as a translator listed, but the database is fully, fully available to anybody. See if we have some other, lots of translators of Chinese here. Chenxin is a translator I know, and you can, look up more about them. And again, find their contact down here. I will say that if they're, if you are looking for your language and don't see it here, perhaps not a surprise. Here's we don't have any translators yet, but you can also message, I'm putting the email in the chat, info@literarytranslators.org, which is the general information email for the American Literary Translators Association. And it's worth asking. It's worth asking them, if beyond people in the translators database, if they happen to know anybody working from that language. And ideally somebody will get back to you there. Okay, we're gonna go back to, here we go. Okay, so we're back here to Alta's Translators database. Let me see. Let me actually pause there and just ask if anybody has any questions on some of those routes to finding a translator, or if anybody has any other ways that they've found a translator that they want to share for the group. Any questions or things you want to share?
Well,
Arthur.
can I say, like, it's a thought. It's not about the translators, but if we could have a similar database with agents or publishers who would be happy to publish translated books. Is there anything like that?
That's a great question, because the answer is yes. So this is also starting at the so if we go back here to the American Literary Translators website, you're 2 steps ahead of me, Arthur, because another thing I was going to show you later today is that right under the translators database, we also have a publishers database. This again is something that Alta started in January, and so they're still adding to it, but you can search here and see a list of lots of different publishers who publish work in translation. So here we have their names. Here's the format. So like, is this a publisher who publishes, is this a publishing house that does books, or are they a journal or magazine who is interested not in a full-length work, but in one poem or one story or one article, and the genres. Eventually we hope to list how they pay. Yeah, Rania, go ahead.
Yes, the screen sharing is the presentation, so it's not the website.
Oh no! Oh gosh!
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right.
Let me switch over to that tab. Thank you for catching me. Give me one moment. Okay, now can you see the publisher's database here?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Okay, thank you for catching me. If that happens again, please stop me. Okay, so here's the publisher's database. Let me show you again how to get to it. So you'll go from what I linked in the chat. You can go to the menu and then go to the publisher's database, and you'll find this here. You can, again, kind of click on one of these presses and learn more about them. You can see, then navigate to their website, and that's probably the best way to find out whether they're accepting submissions or whether they're open to publishing new works. Let's see. Here's Massachusetts Review. So, that last one was a book publisher. This one is a journal. And then you can navigate and learn more about them through here. So this would be a great place to start. It's a great, great place to start to look through different books and journals that are accepting translations and eager to publish translations. Okay, let me share this presentation again. Okay, can you guys see the presentation again? Yes, okay, great. So working with a translator, I'm curious if anybody wants to share. We've had a couple people share their experiences of working with a translator, but is there anybody else who would like to share their experience of working with a translator?
Yeah, Arthur, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Since like my translators here maybe might be hearing what I'm saying, I don't see any problems with the translator. It's like what the problems that we are facing are not about, well, it is translators' problem too, but it's about how to describe realia that are not about the language. They are about something that doesn't exist in the other culture. And it is especially tricky when it comes to things that are almost the same, but not quite the same. But that changes the whole thing. And it's always a dilemma what to do to try to familiarize the like find a similarity and keep the English version of it, or to keep to the original version. And that's really like it's challenge because I don't know. For example, like if you take that book we're trying to translate, it's about Christmas. But immediately for Russian culture, it's not about Christmas. It's about the New Year. But the way we celebrate the New Year, it's like you celebrate Christmas. But it's not about the religion. It's for everyone. It's intercultural holiday back in Russia. In some other cultures, it's strictly it's for everyone, but it's a religious thing. So, and we are doing a back and forth with this. And do we call Santa Claus Santa Claus, or do we call him a different word? If it were just a by-side theme, we could skip it, but it's the core of the story. So it's really it's very challenging, and that's why like maybe because I don't consider a book being just a text. I think it's like a collective project. It has to do with the publishers, it has to do with the audiences, and I don't know how other people, I care about if my book will be read, understood, and appreciated. I care about this. So it's not just about like expressing myself as an artist. I want to be part of that, like the new readers community. So that's I don't know how to deal with this. It's like for me, for us, it's a big problem. So that's always we face. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that those are some of the core, I see your hand, Mukhtar, thank you. I think that those are some of the core challenges in translation. And I think that in my experience as a translator, sometimes, especially when you know so much about the context of the original work or language or country, you want to make sure that the reader understands that full picture. And that can feel so challenging when there's so much that you want to convey that is on the page and that is maybe unsaid, but that the reader in the original language would just know or have experienced. Sometimes translators and authors can address those things by writing an introduction to the work or an afterword to the work, and so have some other text where they kind of let the literary work stand on its own merits and then have a chance elsewhere to say, here are things that you, the English reader, might want to know. And here's, some context that I can share with you. So that can sometimes be an opportunity. Some translators put footnotes in. I don't tend to like that because I personally feel like I want the reader to have that seamless reading experience and then get more information and not be taken out of the reading experience and not be taken out of whatever the flow of the language or the musicality or the scene or the characters are. And sometimes, and this can be a challenge, I think, especially when you're, at the beginning stages of translating a work and you want to convey everything, sometimes I think it's enough to not explain every little detail, but allow the kind of full effect of the scene, to allow the reader to experience it through your words and through your writing. And they might not know all the little details, but they will have an emotional experience or an artistic experience, and then might take the impetus to go look things up later. But it's a challenge. I'll say that, these are things that we talk a lot about in translation circles, and in the chat, after I call in Mukhtar, I'm going to put in, the American Literary Translators Association has some online panels about translation where authors talk about these things and related things. And so if you're interested in kind of hearing translators, these aren't problems that anybody solves. These are problems that come up again and again with every work, and translators kind of address them in different ways. But if you're interested in hearing translators talk about how they approach this, I'll put the link to those events in the chat. Mukhtar, yes.
Yeah, I'm agree with that. It's a big challenge to make a good translation. From my experiment, I can share that with you. I think it's important to see your translator face يعني. It's important. And also in the beginning, I remember we didn't start before reading ourselves. I shared with him some quick text in other sites, and I told him that you must return back before your work, return back to my character and يعني, discover my character with writing, and after that you can start. And we scheduled our work, and the challenge that really how we can find the same island to stand up together. And to be honest, also, يعني sometimes translator can share a good ideas for your text, and you mustn't be hard with translator because sometimes maybe he can spot he can present يعني a great vision for your text that you can't imagine. But in the end, I think if I can consider it as advice from my experiment, I think you must work with him يعني day a day. And also you must be the first editor for him before he returned back to her text and make editation for edit for him. And I'm completely agree with that. It's a great challenge. But if you can make the distance between you as a human, as a person, more closer, I think you will يعني, get a long shot between you and your translator. I remember in Portuguese, I want, يعني, when I start work with my translator, sometime يعني, he point for something that I can't note in Brazil, in their habit, in their traditional or something else. So it's important يعني, to know about our context. Both of us know about context. And know more and more about character of writer, character of translator. Thank you.
Yeah, those are great thoughts. I think that, in the best relationships that I've had with authors, like Rania, are ones where you know that everybody is working in service of the other person and that it's a really giving and collaborative experience. And Rania knows that I'm the biggest champion of her work, and I know that she is the biggest champion of the work that will, is our collaboration, that is the English translation of her writing that will then go to readers, and to be able to have those open conversations and to learn from each other, and to approach it with the knowledge that you're both trying, you're both working to make this piece of writing the best it can be in a new language. And sometimes that requires some things to change, and sometimes it means that not everything that exists in the original comes across in the English, but sometimes you find, the work can shift in ways, or be edited, or gain something in the new language that is additive to the work. But yeah, Rania, please go ahead, and then Hadaya, you had something to say as well.
Yes, I have been raising my hand for a while. I want to go back to Arthur's question about the culture aspect, that it could be like a little difficult to be transferred from language to language. And I want, Lizzie, if you allow me to just let light or shed light on our experience together. For example, Lizzie, when she doesn't know exactly what I mean, she would ask, what do you mean in this? For example, rakuba, the word rakuba, which is very Sudanese thing. It just, you find it in Sudan. So when she doesn't have the name for it in English, she would ask, what is it in Arabic? Or how this? Or can you send me a picture? So she would have this visual aspect, which will help her to find the exact word for that, or just imagine how that would be. And this is very good thing, because sometimes we learn through visual and videos or whatever, and pictures, photos, more than words. Because sometimes it is hard to transfer, for example, the name of Rakuba or Arisha, which is a very Sudanese thing, but we have a physical thing for it, but there is no word in English for it. Also, if there is something that you can communicate in very deep level with your translator, and they do the same. If they didn't find a word, instead of making assumption, this what it could mean, just ask you, you could provide them with a picture or photo or description of what that means. Even the materials, what a specific thing made of, that will lead the text to be more rich and more sensory to the reader. That's what I want to say. Thank you.
Yeah, beautifully put, Rania. Yeah, that's a great example too. I remember that. And, I'll say, you as the writer know your work best. And so you might have an idea before the translator even starts of something that you don't want them to miss, or that, maybe in Rani's next story, she'll send it to me and she will know that there's something in there that is so particular to Sudan, and I probably won't know it. So maybe next time, she will write that to me. Here's my story. And by the way, there's this word, and this is what it is. So, feel, as a translator, I always appreciate the more an author shares about, shares with me. And sometimes it's, this is what the physical building looks like. And sometimes it's, this is a reference to a line of poetry, or sometimes it's, this is emotionally important for me. This is the most emotional important part of the work. So all that information helps the translation. Hadaya, did you have something that you wanted to share?
Yeah, thank you. Actually, I have three examples, if if I can. The first one, there is no relation between me, like a writer, and the translator, because I have many experience like this, because when we under the war and the siege, Gaza still under the siege around 17 years. So I just have my own blogs. I published all the time the articles, the short stories. So when it's war, it's not my priority to, because there is sometimes no internet, no electricity. So just I publish it and that's it. So many translator can see my article from my blog. So I just find it published after time. But they save my name and their name, and they write the resource of the text. They really I feel it's like a gift to me, because it's very hard when you are in war to be in a normal that you can review what you are writing, what you are meaning. So it's weird maybe when you are here this, but it's gifts. I can see it like gifts, and just I want to know them just to thank them of this. And I have another experience actually. There is, you know, how to say it. um, there is many book have my stories and published it, and just I know from friends about friends from this publishing, but I'm not catching this book or can see it. I have this experience when I came here. I can catch the books and see them while it's happened before many years. Some of example, sometimes they are Palestinian and they are the first language of them is Arabic, but they ask me what I mean in Arabic, some word, you know, because sometimes it's your way to use some word in to describe something. You mean it. So they ask many times, what's the meaning from Arabic to Arabic, to can catch the meaning in English or the nearly. Just the last example, it's not I dislike it, but it's I want to mention something, but they just added one word, and I see it. It's the title. The title of one story is about Palestinian whom suffering in the jail, in Israel jail, and that Israel soldier woman cut the hair of the Palestinian prison. So the title of the story is a cycle, a sickle. I mean this word because it's not just cutting her hair. She tried to cutting the roots of her past and present and future. And this machine, it's you know it's the farmer used it. It's mean she try to cut her hair because she know she have someone lover, and he all of her family love her hair. And you know Palestinian women like their hairs, and it's very long, and it's very beautiful. So this the main of the story, it's about this, but the translator they added another title. It's a gel. So as a writer, I didn't want just to tell the people from the title what is where and the time or the place or the characters in this story. I just want if they like the first story, they complete it. But it's I feel it's not it's good to ask in that time. But as I tell you, it's very many hard. But sometimes really I hope they can ask about any added things, because you know you have that style of your writing, and you like to be not very clear to all the people. You can catch this. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I think that's said so beautifully, and I think that that's another great tension of writing and of writing and translation, maybe especially, but some writing we do is to be extremely clear about everything to the reader, and in other types of writing, it might be your intention as the author to leave the reader wondering, or to leave something open to two interpretations, or for them to not know everything in the beginning and then learn more and more and get to a new place by the end of it. And I think that those are competing desires at times with what you've said and what Arthur said. Excuse me. And it might be different for different works or for different people, but I think that there could absolutely sometimes be the impulse as a translator, as a writer, to say, oh, I want to explain everything in this, but I think there's also something very beautiful in what you described, which is some restraint or not explaining everything and allowing the reader to have this artistic, literary, human experience. Okay, I'm going to move on a little bit more because I want to make sure, I so appreciate you all sharing, and I also want to make sure we get to some of the more informational parts about publishers and funding. So you'll see what the next topics here we've already covered. Rania, I was going to ask you for your perspective, and you were so generous, you shared before I even asked. Going back to kind of big picture, working with a translator, I think one thing that your stories have illustrated is that there are all different types of relationships between translators and authors. Some relationships are more collaborative than others. We've talked about a lot of very collaborative relationships where you, the author, and the translator are asking each other questions, or like Mukhtar said, maybe you're proposing edits, or the translator has suggested edits. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. And other relationships, like Hidayah said, sometimes there's very little communication between the author and the translator. I think in an ideal world, a translator should always get in touch with you and ask you for permission to translate your work before translating it. They should definitely ask for permission before publishing it. Hidayah, I know that the moment of that piece coming into the world in English, in genocide and in war, those were exceptional, incredibly difficult and exceptional circumstances. And it sounds like even though there wasn't a lot of contact, you were still happy with how that came out. But yes, even aside from a situation like that, I've had some authors who I work with who aren't very interested in being part of the process of translation, and that's okay too. As a translator, I love for an author to answer my questions to make it the best work it can be in English. But there's some authors who I've worked with who are happy to answer my questions, and that's kind of it. Or they just say, you know what, I wanted to do the writing in Arabic, and I really don't care about the translation. I really don't, the English is a different thing, and I'm less interested in that. And so you do, you make the best choices you can. So there's kind of all different there's a whole spectrum of what relationships can look like between a translator and an author. Sometimes translators and authors will work together kind of exclusively, and other times an author might have their work translated by many translators. Rania's another great case of that. When she wrote her poetry book, Something Evergreen Called Life, I think we first started talking about it, and maybe Catherine asked if I was interested in translating. I think I'm remembering this correctly. And I love to translate stories and novels and prose, but I love to read poetry, but I am not a very good poetry translator yet. Maybe one day I will be. But I certainly know a lot of poetry translators who do an incredible job translating poetry. And so I suggested some translators I know who I thought would do much do a greater service for Ranya's work than I could do. And so, I think that can be a beautiful thing too, to have a whole community of people working together, or, maybe working together for different projects. And sometimes it's not because a translator is more or less skilled at something, but because, you worked with one translator for a long time and then, they got a new job or they're busy, or, you want to get something translated now and they don't have time. And so I think it's important to be in touch with each other, but it's certainly not an exclusive relationship always. As Mukhtar said, some translators will offer editorial suggestions. So some translators might take your work and really just translate it exactly as is. And especially as you develop a relationship, some translators might come back and say, hey, I think this last paragraph, maybe you could expand on it. It would be even more powerful. Or, this really wasn't clear to me why this character did this. What do you think about explaining that some more? And, I'll say that I have a colleague, Kareem James Abu Zaid, who translates the poetry of Najwan Darwish, and they have a beautifully collaborative relationship where Najwan writes a poem and then he passes it to Kareem and Kareem starts translating it, and together they choose which poems to translate. And then I say, oh, this one works so well in Arabic, but I just can't see it working in English. Or, okay, when we do the next book together in English, let's pick these poems from this book and these poems from that other book. And so, again, that's a really collaborative relationship, but, I think that, some authors are open to that. So maybe you want a translator who is giving you feedback on your work and sharing ideas, or maybe you want to work with somebody who translates your work exactly as it is. And either of those is okay. And I think it's most important just to be clear with each other about what you're looking for out of that working relationship. Some translators, like Rania said, will pitch your work to publishers. So some translators will translate, a piece of work for a fee, and others will act kind of as like your agent in the world. And this is something that Rania mentioned that I've done with her is I'm in touch with her and I'm always asking Rania, what are you writing? What are you writing? Will you share your latest work? And then she'll send it to me and I'll say, oh, I love this story. Are you okay if I start translating it? I'm thinking of sending it to this journal or this magazine. And so then I, as translator, will take the translation that I've done and send it out to publishers. And we'll talk in a little bit about the differences between sending it to journals or magazines and sending it to book publishers. But I think it's, not all translators will do that for all works. I've had authors come to me and say, hey, are you interested in translating my book? And there's been one case where I've said, yes, I can translate it, but, I'm busy with other projects right now and I don't have the time to be sending this out to lots of publishers. And so, yeah, that's something that a translator may or may not do. But this brings me to best practices, which is just to be clear about expectations in the beginning. Are you looking for a translator who is also going to help place your work with a publisher? And if that's what you're looking for, it's a great thing to tell the translator you reach out to in the beginning, so they can be clear about whether that is something they can do or not. Okay. Any more questions before we move on to publishers?
Yeah, can I share a point? I think it's important during translation. After we send our text to translator, we must consider now this is text belonging to both of us. No, it isn't mine alone. It's important, yani, to make it more easier for author and translator.
Yeah, that's certainly how I consider it too. Now this is our collaborative work. This is both of ours. And I think that can be hard sometimes, especially when it's a personal piece of writing. I think that's
Sometimes translator present يعني, a vision about the text, but the author said, no, it's my text. You can't do anything. I think this is bad for translator.
Rania, go ahead.
Yes, I want to share also something. I just remember bits of our like cooperation, let's say every time and when and then. I remember one day I said, thank you so much. And you said, why? And I said, for you to do such good translations and also to expand the audience or the readers for this text. And I think when we add like love and understanding into the work that we do, it could be even benefit more people, more reach. For example, I was writing in Arabic, and the text could only read among the Arabic readers. But when you came along and you did your magical touch in translating, not just the words, because translation is not about transfer a word to word, but a meaning, a feeling, a concept, an idea, a feeling, a culture, a uniqueness, because I believe every culture and every writer has their own uniqueness, whatever that could be, in style, in word of their uses of words, their uses of expression, how they could express themselves and represent their culture that they came from. All of this could be translation. It's not just like a word-to-word thing. That would be liveness translation. That will be not a hearted translations. And as Mukhtar said, like just to be in there is like a bridge, open bridge between you and the translator, and then that could reach the reader. Because what is the aim of translation? It is just to expand and to transfer this writing, whatever how it is, to different audience in different cultures, in different backgrounds, different language, but still they can feel it. And they can feel it because it is humanly based. It is not because intellectual. That's it. So, and I think I'm a little biased to you, Lizzie, but yeah, what you did, I would never, for example, for me, from my little town in Medina City, to reach to be shortlisted in Warwick Prize for Translation in Women, which is publicly and like globally prize, if that without you. So yeah.
I think Rania also, يعني, we must know that as a author, after translation in the first draft, that we will يعني, discover two character, يعني, my character with my writing and the translator character. And I think it's a great challenge for translator that how he can make a harmony between both of these characters. Because in the end, you will be the only one who know this is text now has two character. But for the audience, they wouldn't know that because the hard work that translator did with your text. And I think again and again and again, I will repeat, you must be closer with your translator to make this bridge that you mentioned.
Yeah, great. Yeah, thank you, especially thank you both of you, and thank you, Rania, for such a beautiful testament to the possibility of translation. I feel, yeah, the gratitude is very much mutual. Okay, so we're gonna move on here to our next section, which is talking about publishers. So first, we're gonna talk about magazines and journals. I think that magazines and journals are a great place to start if you're looking to first get your work into English for a couple of reasons. One is because you can start with something small. Hedaya, you mentioned, and I think everyone can find in the chat some examples of works that she has had published. I'm sure more of you have as well, but it's a great place to start. to just, be translating one poem or one story or one journal entry or something like that, and to start to get that work in the world. You don't need to wait for you to write a whole book or a translator to translate the whole book or to find funding for a whole book to start working with a translator and getting your work out into the world. It's also, I will say, I guess point number 2 is that it can often be easier to find a magazine or journal to publish your work than a whole book, because a magazine book publishers can only select so many books to be published, but magazines and journals, because all the work is shorter, they can accept much more, and they're kind of looking more widely. So that's another reason that it's a great place to start. And number 3, sometimes being published in a magazine or journal can then lead to editors noticing that work or being interested. It kind of gives some validity to, an editor from a magazine has already, likes this and supports it and has published it. And so it gives some support to them trying to get published later in, a whole book. So, Arthur, and your translator in the room, that's something that I often recommend to translators and authors. If you are looking to publish a book, maybe start with translating an excerpt of it or a section of it, and then getting that published in a magazine or a journal, whether that's online or whether that's in print. And I think that both of those are valid. Editors and value both online only publications and print publications just the same. So in terms of finding a magazine or journal, this is something that ideally a translator can help you with, but there's also some resources out there for you. There's many publications out there that publish only translations, and there's other publications like Words Without Borders, for example, publishes only translations, and there's many other magazines that publish translation alongside work written originally in English. So I've already shared Alta's publishers database in the chat here. Maybe Catherine, you would share it again, since I found it. I'm going to share it again right here. So here's Alta's publishers database, which is one great place to start reading through. A couple more that publish a lot of work in translation. I could list many, but Words Without Borders is a great place to start. Asymptote Journal is another online publication. Words Without Borders and Asymptote are both free to read, and they publish translations as well from all over the world. And The Common is a print journal that publishes translation alongside writing in English. If you're looking for places to start publishing, you could also look to regionally specific magazines or language specific magazines. Hidea shared her translations that were published, I think one was published, I recognized, in Arabic Literature and English, or Arab Lit, which is, as the name suggests, Arabic literature, only Arabic literature. The Marquez Review is another online magazine that publishes, I think, exclusively from Arabic to English. Obviously, you can tell I translate from Arabic, so I know a lot of the Arabic ones. But maybe especially working with your translator, or once you start to maybe if you're doing some research online for other writers working from your country or language, you might start to see what kinds of magazines or journals they're published in. We're going to talk a bit about submitting your work. And so this is something that you could do as the author, or the translator could do with your permission, is to submit your work to magazines and journals. Some magazines or journals have submission periods, so that means that they're only open to accepting new submissions or new pitches for work for a certain time in the year. I know Words Without Borders, we closed our submissions from December to March because the editors were busy working on the projects that they had already accepted, and then they opened up submissions again. And so sometimes, even if a journal is closed to submissions now, it's worth checking back, because they might open up at a time when they have more availability. Many places will let you submit your work for free. Some journals or magazines charge a fee to submit. I personally feel like there are so many places out there where you could get your work published where it doesn't cost you anything to submit and have your work considered by an editor, that it's not worth it to pay, but that is my opinion, and other people might feel differently. On the other hand, once your work is accepted, both the author and the translator should be paid for the work. Different magazines break that down differently. There are some places that don't pay either the author or the translator. Asymptote is one of those where it's free to read, but also there's no payment to authors or translators for having their work published there. Um, um, but yeah, it should be that when your work is published, you are signing the rights to the original language work to the magazine or journal to publish, and the translator is signing rights, thanks, Resha, for their English translation to the journal, and so both parties should be paid. And finally, edits. So I'll talk a little bit about edits here, and the editor giving back suggestions or feedback or changes that they would suggest for your work. And I want to talk about this a little bit because I know that the editing practices and norms and culture here in the US is very different from most places in the world. People generally say that here in the United States, editors are more interventionistic, or they might make more suggestions than in other places. I know in Arabic, for example, it's very common for an author to finish their book or article, give it to the journal, and for it to be just published as is. Or maybe if you're lucky, you'll get some copy edits, or people will catch grammatical mistakes or things like that. But in the United States, it's really common for editors to have a big role in giving a writer feedback. And so I'll say first and foremost, if an editor comes back and asks you to make changes or has suggestions, oh, thank you, Adea. World Literature Day is a great place. Yes, another great journal. Sorry, I'm reading the chat as this comes. You guys have such great comments. But back to edits. If I will say that whenever an editor comes back to you with suggestions, all of those are optional. You never need to, or you shouldn't feel like you are forced to accept all of those changes. Sometimes it's the translator who will be responding to those, and sometimes it's the author. And so that's a conversation you could have with your translator is, hey, when we get edits back from the editor, do you want to do them? Or I'd like to look at those with you. Or, maybe you want to say, translator, you can take care of it, but if you have any questions, come back to me. So, ideally you can talk about how involved you as the author will be in the editing process. But like I said, those edits are suggestions. They're not mandatory. As a translator, I love getting edited because it's a chance for more collaboration. And, I feel so lucky in this work that I'm not a writer. I don't have an interest in writing things myself, but I love working with other writers on a project of literature. And I love working with editors because they have their own skills and expertise and are often, sometimes they ask good questions that make me realize that what I translated, I didn't translate it very clearly, or, oh, there's something I could add, or, oh, they have a suggestion for how to make it better. So it's never mandatory to accept them. I often accept most of the changes because, but sometimes I'll push back and say, no, I don't think this is what the author meant, or no, I think this is important to keep because it's more close to the original language, or no, I don't really like that change. So just to know that it's optional and that you can have a conversation with the editor, and that if you reject some changes and say, no, I don't want to make that one, they're not going to get offended. It's all part of the process that they are used to. And the other thing I want to say about edits is that I think sometimes if you've never been edited before, it can be a big surprise or a little bit hard to get a piece of writing back and see somebody with a red pen making lots of suggestions and changes. But none of that means that you're not a good writer, or none of it means that it wasn't good enough. It's all that's a very normal part of the process of publishing work here in the United States, is for editors to come back and have feedback. And it's really everybody working together to kind of expand on the ideas and to make your work, the best that it can be. I'm going to talk a little bit about presses, and then we'll have some time for questions. So great. So finding a press. And here I'm talking about publishers that publish books. So all different, I think when I was first coming into, when I was first working as a translator and first learning about different presses, they all seemed the same to me. And I had never really paid that much attention to which books I read came from different publishing houses. But all sorts of different publishing houses have different tastes and different things that they are looking for in books that are submitted to them and different things that they are looking to publish. So, for example, Comma Press, who published these two books. This one is an anthology, a collection that Rania was part of, and this one was Rania's first short story collection. Comma Press is a small press in the United Kingdom, and they pretty much exclusively publish short stories because they're really interested in short story collections and the form of short stories. And so, if I was translating a novel or a collection of poems, it wouldn't make any sense to submit it to them and pitch it to them because it's just not what they publish. It's not what they're interested in. Other time, there's other different presses that might be more interested in memoir or nonfiction work. There might be other presses that are, that publish children's literature, for example. I'm right now translating a young adult novel about Gaza's first female fisherwoman by a Palestinian writer. And I had to learn new presses to submit to because most of the writing that I've translated is for adult readers. And this was the first time I was translating something for kids. And so we had to look for different publishing houses that publish books for young adults and for kids. At the end of the day, you're looking for an editor who believes in your work and is going to be a good advocate for you. Yeah, and your work, ideally, hopefully this book and beyond. But at the end of the day, I mean, sometimes I think it can be easy to think of the editors as like gatekeepers or someone who are just part of the industry, but really they are also just people who love books. And so sometimes, when you get a rejection, it's just because they have different taste from you, and that's okay. And so it's all a matter of finding an editor who says like, oh yes, this is the same kind of thing that I personally like to read. So we talked a little bit about genre, that there's some presses that publish only poetry, some presses that only publish novels and short stories, some that only publish short stories. And so this is, I think often a work for an agent or a translator, but you can certainly be part of this process, is to know a little bit about which, or, even if you're not the one finding the presses to pitch to, it's good for you to know, here's what a translator would be doing when they're finding which publishing house to pitch your work to. Is they're going to be looking at genre, this is a new book of poetry, so we're going to look at different presses and ones that only do poetry or ones that do poetry and prose. There's some presses that only publish literature in translation. Two Lines Press, I don't have the link here, but Two Lines Press is one. Open Letter Books is another, and they only publish literature in translation. There's lots of publishers out there who publish works in translation and works originally in English. And I think that, both of those would be good homes for books of yours. I think that there's no kind of benefit from one or the other. In terms of submitting your work, what the translator will need, or what the person pitching your work will need, is a pitch letter, which is, kind of a more formal email, describing your work and advocating it, and then also a sample translation. And so, for example, when I'm working with an author, first I'll spend a long time working on that sample translation. It's usually around 20 pages of work. And that's often something that, sometimes there's some funding for that, but oftentimes that's work on spec that I'm doing. So work as a translator that I'm saying, okay, I'm hoping to eventually get paid for this work, but for now I'm going to start translating it so that I have a sample to give to publishers in the hopes that they will buy the book and that we will get a contract to translate and publish the whole thing. There's great resources on There's great resources online for pitch letters. And I could also send one around. Catherine, I can send one around that I sent for Ranya's latest collection if people would want to see an example. Patience. This is a hard part of it. I always tell people that literature is a slow moving art. And especially in the United States, publishers can take a very long time. So I've certainly had cases where I've submitted books and it's taken 9 months or a year for a publisher to get back to me. And sometimes they never get back to me. Sometimes they get back to me and say, oh, I've finally had a chance to read this and it's just not the right book for us, but best of luck. And sometimes it's taken a really long time and they've come back and said, oh, yes, I finally had a chance to read this and we would love to publish this work. But even once a publisher says yes, still the process can take a long time. The young adult novel that I'm working on right now, well, hoping to work on, it was a year ago in February, so 14 months ago, that the publisher said, yes, we want to publish it. And we still don't have a contract. I don't think it means she's any less excited about the book. I still think the book is going to happen, but it's very normal in the publishing world in the United States for sometimes things just take a really long time. And it's not because people don't believe in your work. It's not because they're not excited by it or don't want it to happen. It's mostly because many editors at these publishing houses are already working on projects that they have contracts for, or they're getting pitched lots of things, and reading new work to maybe publish is something they do on their weekends or have to do once all the other work is done, or maybe because they don't have enough staff. So it can sometimes feel like if somebody's not getting back to you, it's a reflection on your work or their interest, but it's unfortunately just pretty normal for our industry that it takes a long time for editors to get back to you. Rights. We could have a whole conversation about rights, and I'm certainly not a legal expert. But what I want to say here, okay. You as the original author will sell to the publishing house the rights, the underlying rights to the work, and then the translator will sell the rights to their English translation. And so eventually, when you find a publishing house that wants to publish your work, just like with journals and magazines, there will be two different contracts. So there will be one contract between the publishing house and you saying, okay, we are buying the rights to translate your work from Chinese to English or Russian to English or Arabic to English. And then they also have a separate contract with the author, or sorry, the translator, that will say, we are buying the right to print and distribute your English translation of this work. The translator can't sell the rights to their translation unless you as the author sell your rights. So the publisher has to have both the underlying rights and the rights to the English translation. That's like just the first step to talking about rights in translation. If eventually you're at a point where you are being offered a contract, there are two great resources, one in the United States and one in the UK. The Authors Guild is a membership organization for authors and translators, and you can join if you've been, I think anybody can join. And if you get a contract, you can send it to them and they will have lawyers on their staff go through the contract and give you advice about it and tell you anything you should look out for, and kind of give you suggestions of how you can negotiate better for yourself. Great, thank you, Catherine. And then in the United Kingdom, the organization there is called the Society of Authors. They're also open to authors and translators. I think the Society of Authors you can join after you've been offered a contract for a book, and they will do the same thing. I'm a member of both organizations. At least as soon as I got my first contract, I became a member. I think it costs about $100 for each, so maybe not worth it just to become a member, but I found that it was very helpful to have that legal advice for just $100 when the contract was for an amount of money that was more than that. So those are great resources down the line if you get offered a contract. And payment, I think we just talked about that. Yeah. Authors and translators each get a separate fee. They should get a separate fee for the work. And authors often get royalties, or authors should get royalties. Translators sometimes get royalties, which means that you get a percentage of the profits from each book that's sold. So the more books that are sold, the more royalties or the more money you make off of that. Edits. Okay, we already talked about edits and we're running out of time, so I'm gonna say that edits for books are fairly similar to edits for magazines and journals. Okay, let's hear any questions here, and maybe we'll leave a couple minutes to talk about agents, but yeah, I think this was the bulk of what I wanted to share about publishers. So any questions about publishers? I know we've covered a lot.
Can I ask?
Yes, please go ahead.
If I understand the process to when we write in our original language, like Arabic, when I finished, is it better to search about the company with the multi task like translation and publish it and how to make like events for this, or it's better when I finish the original book to find special translator, after that try to publish with the company or something.
That's a great question. I think in most cases, it's best to find a translator first because they're the one who can create the sample to send to publishing houses and presses, or they can, if it's a collection of stories or a collection of poems, they could translate one to send to journals. When you're approaching the publishing houses, you will need to have a sample of your work in English, about 20 pages. And so I think it's best to work with the translator first to get a really strong samples that you can then approach publishers with. That said, I think the exception is if you're publishing in certain journals or magazines or even publishing houses that specialize in a language. So for example, the editors at Arab Lit, which I'll put in the chat, read Arabic. And so for them, you could send in your piece in Arabic and say that you're interested in having it published. And then if they accept it, then they would help connect you with a translator. Or then you could say, I'm glad you've accepted it. Here's the translator who I usually work with, and you could introduce them. And that's the same with publishing houses too. Let me think just one moment. I think Dar Arab is one publishing house in the UK that's where the editors speak English. Here it is. Darf Publishers is another one in the UK where the editors speak English, speak Arabic. And so you could send your book to them and the editors could read it in Arabic and decide whether or not they want to take it on. I don't, again, I translate from Arabic, so I know the publishers who work in Arabic. I don't know from other languages, but that's the kind of thing that, a translator might know or you might find in some of these databases. Other questions? Okay, I'm going to move on so we can talk a little bit about agents and funding, and then maybe I'll leave a couple minutes at the end for any more questions. Okay, we already talked about this. I got myself out of order. Okay, we already talked about editorial. Great. Okay, now we're up to the section on agents and funding. So I know we've talked a little bit about agents before, and you've heard me describe a lot of the things that I often do as translator to pitch authors' works to publishing houses. The role of an agent is kind of, covers many of the things that I just talked about, but not, and also some more. So an agent will sometimes offer edits or feedback on your work. Sometimes they can connect you with a translator. Raya Agency is one agency, again, that works from Arabic to English. I'll put that in the chat. And as a translator, sometimes I've worked with them sometimes where they'll say, hey, we've read this book in Arabic. We really want to, we as an agent want to represent it. And so we're going to contract with a translator to put together a sample. So an agent could connect you with a translator, or if you already have a translator you work with, then you would bring them usually into the conversation and into the working relationship. An agent will then pitch your book to publishers. So they will write that pitch letter. They'll probably help edit your sample and then come up with a list of publishers to say, hey, I think your book would be a really good fit for these publishing houses. They tend to like work like yours, or they said that they're looking for work like what you've written. Part of their job is to have the knowledge of the publishing industry and to know which publishing houses are looking for what kind of work. And an agent will help you negotiate a contract. Like I said, they will do all the negotiations for you, kind of similar to the Authors Guild and the Society of Authors, which will, give you feedback and then give you the information so that you can negotiate your contract. I will say, though, that it's not very common for agents to represent authors in translation. Part of it is because agents sometimes like to read the whole work before representing it. Literature in translation doesn't tend to sell as many copies as much literature written only in English. And so for some agents, just the finances of that don't make sense. Agents make their living by taking a percentage of whatever publishing deal they're able to secure. And so if they're selling books written in English for a lot of money, then their percentage is larger. And if they're selling books in translation for a smaller, advance or fee from the publisher to the author, then their percentage is smaller. It's not very common, I will say, to see authors in translation with agents, although it does happen. And as I've said, translators often fulfill many of the roles when promoting literature and translation that an agent would fulfill. Funding, who pays for translation? That can really vary. Often it's the publisher who pays for the translation. Sometimes there are grants that you can get to support the translation of your work. And I've also seen it, and this is like a very rare case where an author will say like, oh, I have funding from a certain source. Maybe it's a residency, maybe it's, their family, maybe they're like a very wealthy author who an author would support the translation themselves, although as I've said, that's very uncommon. For grants, one great place for translators to look is the Penheim Translation Fund. That's another award that Rania's book won, and I think it's $4,000 towards the translation of a book. And so that goes, again, you would need a sample to apply for that, and it's the translator that applies, but it's a great way to get the translation partially funded. Sometimes there's other grants specific to a specific country or language. I think Rania mentioned Al Mawrid Al Thaqafi, which is for Arabic works. And then there's also other opportunities that I wanted to tell you guys about. One is the Alta Travel Fellowships. So if there's anybody here in the room who is not only an author, but is also working on a translation, this is a great chance at this. It's $1,000 to cover travel to the Alta conference. And you get to read your work and you get to meet with editors. So I'll put information for that in the chat. Yeah, if you're a translator, if you know a translator who's just starting out, it's just for emerging translators. But that can be a great opportunity to connect to other translators. Alta also offers emerging translator mentorship. So again, this is just for you if you are starting to work as a translator, and this can be of your own work. And English doesn't need to be your first language in order for you to translate into English. There's many translators who are bilingual or grew up speaking another language who translate into English. But the mentorship is another program that also offers that pairs emerging translators with an established translator. And then that established translator acts as a mentor or a teacher throughout the year as the translator is working on their first project. And that's it. We have just a couple minutes left. But yeah, I'm happy to answer any more questions that have come up. And then just want to say thank you so much for letting me share many parts of my industry, of our collective industry of literature with you today. I really appreciated hearing all of your stories and hearing about your work. Yeah, and I'm grateful for the time. So any questions or last thoughts?
Thank you, Lizzie, so much for all of these generous, really generous resources that you shared with us. Thank you so much. And I encourage you, anyone who has any question for Lizzie, to just drop it in the chat or just say it out loud, which will be wonderful. Thank you.